Welcome to Marti Talks Theatre. 6 quick sessions celebrating Theatre Fairfield's new artistic home in the Wien Blackbox Theatre at the Quick Center for the Arts. I'm Marti Monaco, professor of theatre and co-producer of Theatre Fairfield. Theatre Fairfield has been performing at the Quick Center since it opened its doors in 1989. But our home base was the charming, intimate Pepsico Theatre across campus. The Pepsico suffered a devastating flood in September 2018, and we have been nomads ever since, until now. We are proud to become the resident company in the Black Box as of the 2020-21 season, and are eager to introduce ourselves to the many quick patrons who have yet to see one of our shows. Marti Talks Theatre introduces you to Theatre Fairfield, past and present. The first 3 episodes were interviews with outstanding graduates of Fairfield's theatre program who began their careers in theatre right here at the Quick Center. All of those sessions you can see at quicklive.com, where they are archived. The last 3 episodes feature leading actors in our production of Shakespeare's Titus Andronicus, which would have opened in the Black Box on April 20th. Last week, we spoke with Carlin Fournier, Titus himself. And in our final segment next week, we turn to exciting stage combat. Megan Beauregard and Kierstin Bjork, who play the dastardly brothers, Chiron and Demetrius, join our fight choreographer and intimacy director, Dan Burke, to discuss the multiple challenges of acting, speaking lines, and fighting all at once, and portraying despicable male characters who do terrible things to women. We'll also see some great video of Megan and Kierstin in dual machete fights. But today, Kierstin Jones, who plays Aaron, the brilliant, crafty, and despicable villain of the play, and I are proud to be joined by my colleague, sociology professor Rochelle Brune-Bevel, to discuss Black Lives Then and Now, exploring Blackness in Shakespeare's 1594 tragedy, Titus Andronicus. Welcome, Kierstin, and welcome, Rochelle. Very happy to have you with us today. Kierstin is playing the extraordinary African Moor. This is the 2nd largest role in the play. And this play was written almost 10 years prior to Othello, which of course is Shakespeare's other major Black character. Aaron is brilliant, eloquent, commanding, crafty, and absolutely despicable. In a play filled with awful characters who murder 14 other characters on the stage in front of the audience, Aaron is worst. He not only incites violence, mayhem, and murder, but delights in it. Towards the end of the play, he tells his captor Lucius, "Tut! I have done 1,000 dreadful things as willingly as one would kill a fly. And nothing grieves me heartily indeed, but that I cannot do 10,000 more." Wow. Yet, when his illegitimate son is presented to him by the nurse with orders that it be killed immediately, he transforms into a proud, loving father who will do anything to see his son thrive. Now, a bit of backstory here for those of you who don't know the play. Aaron has had a long-standing affair with the newly married Empress of Rome, whose Black newborn is clearly not the son of her husband, the white Roman emperor. This morning, we will explore the multiple sides of this fascinating character and the many challenges he presents for us in the 21st century, when the last thing we want to do is present a murderously evil Black male character to contemporary audiences. Aaron presents even further challenges to Kierstin, an African-American woman who, as an actor, has to confront playing not only Aaron's evilness, but his maleness. Let me introduce you in a little more detail to Kierstin Jones, class of 21, who is a theater major with a minor in biochemistry. She used to be a chemistry and theater double major, but ultimately her love for theater kind of slipped into primary space without losing her expertise and love for science. Just 3 weeks ago, maybe not even 2 weeks ago, at the university's Innovative Research Symposium 2020, she presented her research project determining the importance of exocytes in insulin-degrading enzyme. This is a multiple talented young woman. And Kierstin in Theatre Fairfield has devoted most of her time to the all-important leadership role of stage management. Could we have the first slide, please, where we can see Kierstin doing her major work in stage management. Stage managers, for those of you who don't know, actually run the show during performances and are the right hand to the director during the entire rehearsal process. So as a junior, she's already stage managed 3 productions and assistant stage managed several more. She's also appeared on stage with us, but only once before. Here you see her in last year's riotously funny Short Terms Affairs, which was part of Director's Cut 2018. And she's with actor Park Lytle, who I'm going to mention in a few minutes, so keep him in your mind's eye. She also helps build sets. Here she is literally on set with drill in hand. And she has worked as a teaching artist in our educational theater initiatives with the Bridgeport Public Schools. In this slide, if we could have the next slide, please, she is with a student at Harding High School in Bridgeport on the information display wall. We don't have that image. Oh, there it is. Great. That she was helping this young guy discern for one of Theatre Fairfield's other productions. So I'd like to turn to Dr. Rochelle J. Brune-Bebel, who is Associate Professor in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology here at Fairfield. She is also a member of the advisory committees for the Black Studies and Women, Gender, and Sexuality Studies programs. So she couldn't be a better guest today. Thank you, Rochelle. She also knows a lot about the entertainment industry. She has recently co-authored with Minjong Kim an article entitled Hollywood's Global Expansion and Racialized Film Industry in the journal Humanity and Society's special issue, Beyond Representations, Production, Distribution, and Consumption of Racialized Media. Kim and Brune-Bebel also have a chapter in the edited volume, Racialized Media, the Design, Delivery, and Decoding of Race and Ethnicity, published by New York University Press in May 2020. So welcome again to you both. So let's get into Titus. And we're going to begin with a 2-minute video of Kierstin in action on stage. About a minute ago, you saw a photo of Park Lytle, who is also one of our leading actors in Theatre Fairfield, and we just discovered a great cinematographer. Park took extensive videos, which he then edited for our website, Titus Online, which I encourage you all to take a look at to really learn a lot about this show. And he edited this video and created all of these profiles of his fellow actors. So this one is about Kierstin as Aaron, and we can watch her strut her stuff on stage. Can you run the video, please, KJ?
Now climbeth Tamara Olympus.
RJ's running the video, not KJ.
Safe out of fortune's shot. The woods are ruthless, dreadful, deaf and dull, and sits aloft, secure of thunder's crack or lightning flash. Cut off your hand and send it to the king. And having gilt the ocean with his beams, gallops the zodiac in his glistering coach and overlooks the highest peering hills. Zounds! Ye whore, is black so base a hue? so Tamara. Upon her wit doth earthly honor wait. Villain, I have done thy mother. And virtue stoops and trembles at her frown. Go to the Empress, tell her this, I said. Ah! Then, Aaron, arm thy heart, and fit thy thoughts to mount aloft with thy imperial mistress. Now to the Goths, as swift as swallow flies, and mount her pitch, whom thou in triumph long hast prisoner held. Aye, that I had not done 1,000 more, fettered in amorous chains. Ah, why should wrath be mute and fury dumb? I am no baby, I, that with base prayers I should repent the evils I have done, and faster bound to Erin's charming eyes than is Prometheus tied to Caucasus. 10,000 worse than ever yet I did would I perform if I might have my will. If one good deed in all my life I did, I do repent it from my very soul.
Thank you. So thank you so much. My only big regret is that we couldn't actually watch you do that in full production. But let's talk about the aspects of the character of Aaron. So what we've seen from that video and what we're going to be really exploring this morning is Aaron as leader. He is clearly eloquent, self-assured, confident, well-educated, and ambitious. And remarkably, other characters listen to him and do his bidding without question, even though he holds absolutely no official status or position in Rome at this time. Classic example, Titus willingly allows Aaron to cut off his hand in what he thinks is a deal to give his hand to the emperor via Aaron, who will then return his condemned sons to him. And of course, as you might imagine, this does not happen. But that's the kind of willingness people have to believe in Aaron. The second thing, and we're going to be exploring this later in the program, is Aaron's celebration of his blackness, which doesn't really start until Act 4, when he's presented with his newborn son, whose mother is the White Empress of Rome. And one of our big questions is, why does it take Shakespeare so long in the play to have Aaron celebrate his blackness and the blackness of his son? Kierstin is now going to perform live for you the opening monologue of Aaron in the play. And I'm just going to take a moment to set this up. Act 1 is interminable. It takes forever, and there are a gazillion characters on stage. The only one who is Black is Aaron. He has no lines. He is not actually featured in any part of the act. He is a prisoner who has been brought to Rome by Titus and his sons, and he is accompanying the Queen of Goths, Tamara, who will become Empress of Rome, and her 3 sons. We really don't understand why Aaron is there, but he is. I have staged him in conversation with them, but in the shadows, kind of not front and center on stage. And during this long act, one of the sons gets killed in the first 3 minutes of the play by Titus. Tamara marries the Roman emperor, the newly proclaimed Roman emperor, Saturninus, and the prisoners are all released, and instead of being prisoners, are being treated as honored guests of Rome. The stage clears. The only person left on stage is Aaron. He walks down stage and he addresses the audience with this eloquent speech. And he is by far the most eloquent, most engaging character we will have met thus far. So Kierstin, please perform the monologue for us.
Now climbeth Tamara Olympus' top, safe out of fortune's shot, and sits aloft, secure of thunder's crack or lightning flash, advanced above pale envy's threatening reach. As when the golden sun salutes the morn, and having gilt the ocean with his beams, gallops the zodiac in his glistering coach and overlooks the highest peering hills. So Tamara. Upon her wit doth earthly honor wait, and virtue stoops and trembles at her frown. Then, Aaron, arm thy heart, and fit thy thoughts to mount aloft with thy imperial mistress, and mount her pitch whom thou in triumph long hast prisoner held, fettered in amorous chains, and faster bound to Aaron's charming eyes than is Prometheus tied to Caucasus. Away with slavish weeds and servile thoughts. I will be bright and shine in pearl and gold to wait upon this new-made empress. To wait, said I, to wanton with this queen, this goddess, this Semiramis, this nymph, this siren that will charm Rome Saturnine and see his shipwreck and his commonweals.
Bravo, thank you. So, Rochelle, I'm going to throw this to you and to comment on this remarkable character, power without status, and classical liminal figure.
Great, so thank you, Kierstin, for delivering the monologue. I think it's really interesting to think about Aaron in this case, right? So we've talked about how he was a prisoner, now he's been released, he's free to do what he wants. And he has this power. You can see it in how she delivered the monologue. People listen to him. Even though he doesn't have any real status in Rome, they listen to him, right? And it's really interesting. He really is this sort of classical liminal figure, right? He's an insider and he's an outsider at the same time. And because he's this new person on the scene, he has this sort of keen insight into what's going on. And he's able to move people to do what he wants them to do throughout the play. And so it's a really interesting position that he's in this liminal insider-outsider status.
Yeah, I agree. And also thinking about this question of why all of these white characters are listening to him and doing the things that he tells them to do, while at the same time talking, such terrible things behind his back. And I mean, considering his origin, ethnicity, as you will, as a Moor, for someone so foreign, he obviously has extensive knowledge of Roman gods and their mythology. And, like you said, he's a very smooth talker. He's very eloquent and he uses his language so cleverly. And I mean, sometimes when you see, foreign characters on stage or in movies, they talk differently from other people. And that's one of the things that makes them distinct from the other characters. But Aaron is not that way. He uses his language arguably just as well, if not better, than all of the other characters, despite being the other. And also considering the fact that there's all of this chaos happening around them constantly. Like we said, people are being brutalized, people are dying, there's lots of violence and all this uncertainty. But Aaron is this stable, steady, cool-headed figure. And of course, the audience knows that he's the one who's in fact causing all of this chaos, but no one else has figured that out yet. And so when they hear this voice of what they think is reason and stability, they listen. And so it's just very interesting that way.
And of course, there's the fact we have seen Tamara. We have met her extensively. We know who she is. We know she's white. We know she has just married the Emperor of Rome. And this Black character comes out and says, and I'm not only her lover, but I hold her in the palm of my hand. I have power, which is, just a mind blow, particularly to think about how audiences responded to this in 1594.
Right. So he talks about it so eloquently in that monologue, right? Which was most certainly taboo, forbidden, this sort of interracial kind of relationship. Plus, it's an adulterous relationship, but he's very proud of the way he talks about it in that monologue.
Absolutely. Can we have the next slide? This is a fascinating bit of history. So as a theater historian, stay with me here for a moment as we show you, this is known as the Peachum drawing. We think it originated around 1605, perhaps a little later. This is the first drawing of a Shakespeare play that we have from Shakespeare's lifetime, from that period. And hey, it just happens to be Titus Andronicus. Take a look at all the figures in this drawing, right? So it is very clear not only who Aaron is, but he is leaping off the page at us on the far right side. You're going to hear in Kierstin's next monologue, he's going to self-describe as coal black, and certainly the artist made him coal black in this drawing. Notice he's got an unsheathed sword in his hand. He is checking the tip to see how sharp it is, and his stature is actually larger than anybody else in the drawing. So let's have at this, Rochelle and Kierstin, some comments on this and how, Kierstin, perhaps this drawing influenced you in creating character.
So I think it's interesting that, you know, even though he's larger and you certainly go to him right away, he's still placed on the edge of the drawing, right? So he's in no way near the center. So I think it conveys visually his outsider status, even though he's sort of looking towards the middle of the drawing. And also, of course, when talking about the coal black, it makes us think about the idea of blackface, right? So when the character was cast, he was most certainly played by a white actor in blackface. So we see that kind of also in this drawing as well.
Because of course, that's the only way you can make your skin coal black, through makeup. You know, historically in 19th century minstrelsy in the United States, black actors had to, quote, black up because their skin wasn't dark enough. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sure the actor who played this in 1594 and all the actors who played in blackface thereafter used extremely black makeup for the role. Kierstin, how about you with this? Because last semester, and we'll talk in a little bit later about the great research paper you wrote for my World Theater class, where you looked at racism in Elizabethan England. And certainly this drawing is a very important piece of primary evidence from the period.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, you know, gives you such a good physical a show of how separated he is from all of the other characters because of his skin color. And another thing that's important is in his depiction as the other is that, again, because of, like we said, because of his race, he's never going to be, you know, in charge of anything, and he's never going to achieve any official status. And yet, again, he's this very powerful character. He plays the Romans almost like a puppets on a string, and he's always stirring the pots behind the scenes. And so it's this interesting dichotomy of this character that they always associate as being in this subservient role, who is saying, actually, I'm in control of you. You know, Tamara is in control of Saturninus and the Romans directly, but I'm in charge of Tamara. And so he's just always reveling in this power grab that's going on throughout the play.
Great. Let's use this as a segue into your second monologue, which is from Act 4, Scene 2. And again, just a quick setup here. Tamara's nurse has just shown up with a baby. And the baby is Tamara's son, which everybody thought was probably the emperor's son, but he's not. He's clearly Aaron's son. And the nurse is really upset. She has the son with her. She's looking for Aaron with the order to destroy this child. Because let's face it, not politically advantageous for the new white queen of Rome or empress of Rome to give birth to a black child. So this is Aaron's speech. And in the room at the same time are Chiron and Demetrius, who are Tamara's older sons. And they have an interesting relationship with Aaron. We're going to hear more about Chiron and Demetrius next week, so make sure you tune in and you can meet those actors who play those roles. But Aaron is the kind of older, wise, I don't know if I want to say father figure, but certainly they look to Aaron for advice, for guidance in life, and they're always all together. Presumably they all live together. So they're there. And they are shocked to see their mother's child because somehow these two guys had no idea Mom and Aaron are lovers. So with that introduction, let's move this into our second monologue performance.
Stay, murderous villains. Will you kill your brother? Now, by the burning tapers of the sky that shone so brightly when this boy was got, he dies upon my scimitar's sharp point that touches this, my firstborn son and heir. What? Ye sanguine, shallow-hearted boys, ye white-limed walls, ye alehouse-painted signs, coal-black is better than another hue, in that it scorns to bear another hue. For all the water in the ocean can never turn the swan's black legs to white, although she lave them hourly in the flood. Tell the empress from me, I am of age to keep mine own, excuse it how she can. Look, how the black slave smiles upon the father, as who should say, Old lad, I am thine own. He is your brother, lords, sensibly fed of that self-blood that first gave life to you, and from that womb where you imprisoned were, he is enfranchised and come to light. Nay, he is your brother by the surer side, although my seal be stamped in his face.
Bravo, brava, thank you. I'll just let you two dive into this.
Sure.
You
So
again,
yeah,
Kierstin.
obviously. Oh yeah, thanks. So this monologue is obviously drastically different from the first one. And the first one, he's very, this braggadocious, proud, scheming Aaron who's reveling in all the evils that he and Tamar are going to commit. And his only want and his only desire is the power that he's going to have and the power to bring down everyone else around him. But here in this monologue, we see an obvious change. Now he's very dismissive of Tamar, who he praised so highly in his first monologue. He's like, tell the empress I'm old enough to deal with my own things. She can do whatever she wants. And he's so full of pride and joy in his new child. And so this monologue is really the catalyst for the change in his motivation for the rest of the play. And from this moment on, all of the actions that he takes are to protect his son. So for example, in Act 5, when Lucius catches him and he's about to be hung, right before he spills the beans and tells him who committed all of those terrible acts, he makes Lucius swear an oath that he will protect his son and keep him alive despite whatever happens to him. And it's ironic because Aaron is also this very a-religious figure, and the fact that he's making him swear an oath just shows how powerful and what this new child has awakened in him. And it's this first moment of humanity that we see in Aaron, because so far he's been this formidable force of chaos and death and havoc. And now he sees this reflection of him in his son. and his heart just melts because now he has someone to protect. And so this is really a very significant moment for Aaron and his journey as a character in this play.
And Kierstin also mentioned just now something that she mentioned in her paper as well, so that his Aaron's other status as an outsider because he's not religious, right? So he's got a multiple outsider status. But here we see it's different, right? As she already mentioned, he's also talking about his Blackness very directly, right? And I think it's interesting to talk about the time period, right? 1594, the notion of Blackness is very different than what we have right now, right? So even these ideas of race and hierarchy didn't really come to crystallize until the 18th century, right? So it's a different kind of conception. But if we think about it through our sort of modern lens, thinking about Black is beautiful, sort of civil rights era language, you can kind of see some of that coming forth into the language, even though it was much earlier than it's actually developed in the US context. Really interesting scene, I think.
Yeah. I just want to say to our audiences, we're just going a little bit over time, but we're allowed to, so that's great. If you have any questions, please send them along in the chat at the bottom of your screen, and we'll be happy to address those. So is this a good moment, Kierstin, to talk a little bit more about your historic research, which was fascinating? And if you could just give us more of a portrait of racism in the last decade of the 16th century, in the era of Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, of course. So again, my paper was exploring the racial relations between, Elizabethan England, and how Shakespeare uses the play to bring out the things that he sees going on during his time. And this is something that Shakespeare did often, was using another time and another place to illustrate the problems that he saw in his own society or the trends that he saw in his own society. And usually if you pay attention to what was going on, historically at the time that he wrote certain plays, you can find a similar strain in the political or the social landscape. And this is a way of Shakespeare commenting on current events without calling out, the ruling class, which definitely would have gotten him killed. And so we see in this play racial tensions in the Roman era and how they echo the same strains in between Elizabethan Englanders and the Blackamoors. So the word barbarian that we use in modern English comes from the Latin word barbara, which means a strange foreign land and or an uncivilized people. And to the Romans, and I think probably to most societies really, they considered anyone who was not like them to be barbaric. And it wasn't a strictly negative term because it just meant that they were other. But of course, it had a definitive negative connotation because they considered all other cultures to be inferior to them. And so Tamara, yes, right. And so Tamara and Aaron are barbaric, but Tamara is able to integrate very easily into Roman society despite her being a barbarian and a prisoner of war. And when Bassianus and Lavinia find out about her and Aaron's sexual relationship, their problem isn't just that Tamara is cheating on Saturninus. The problem is that she's having an affair with a Black man, and that is what's so abhorrent about it. And so these two characters, Tamara and Aaron, existing simultaneously kind of brings the hypocrisy to light. Is it just the foreignness that affects their status, or is it race and color? And so in Elizabethan England, religion was originally the main distinction that they made between themselves and other cultures. So for example, Muslims, even though they lived within the geographic boundaries of England, they were not considered residents or citizens because they were not Christian. But during Shakespeare's time, there was a lot of religious upheaval, which went hand in hand with political upheaval as, Protestants and Catholics warred between each other and they went in and out of favor as monarchs rose and fell from power. And so since there was no longer a universal religion and religious affiliations kind of came and went on the whim of the monarchy, that was no longer a distinguishing marker. And by the end of the 16th century, England had shifted from a religious-based discrimination to a race-based discrimination. And this isn't necessarily such a big jump because Christians often used color theatrically to identify good and bad characters, like white was good and Black was bad. And then in 1596, which was, I think, 2 years after Titus premiered, Queen Elizabeth I issued the Edict of Expulsion, which was part of negotiations with Spain to deport blackamoors from England who had come in as prisoners of war. And this stood out because it was the first time that an edict identifying people for their race rather than their religion had been used since, I think, the 13th century. And so these edicts were just the beginning of race-based discrimination that continued, particularly in English literature. And so perhaps, Shakespeare is using the characters of Tamara and Aaron to represent this shift that he's seeing happening in English culture at the time that he wrote the play. And so, yes, that's the crux of the argument of my paper.
And a great paper it is. You may read it on Titus Online, our audience. Just go to the dramaturgy section and you'll see Kierstin's paper right there for you to take a look at. Let's just end by talking about the challenges this play and particularly this character present to us in the 21st century during a celebration of hashtag Black Lives Matter and being confronted with this character who, is problematic. So who wants to take a stab at that one?
I think it's interesting. He's a very complex character, Aaron, right? So on the one hand, he's refuting some stereotypes, right, about sort of Black male fathers, right? So as Kierstin mentioned, he's completely in love with his son. It changes his life, it changes his perspective. So he's a caring father, right? But beyond that, he's certainly refuting this Black male as dangerous, as a villain, as someone to be afraid of kind of stereotype, because he's mastermind behind all these horrible acts, right? So and when we're thinking about things like, racial profiling, right? Or if we think about, even more things like unarmed Black men being killed, in some ways he is sort of along with those stereotypes, right, about Black male criminality, right? So he's a really complex character, I think, Aaron, in this play.
Absolutely. Kierstin, we have a question. Did you find you had anything in common with the character of Aaron?
Do I want to admit that? I don't know. I guess on a basic human level, yes, because when someone is constantly on the outside looking in, you can only imagine how frustrating that must be to see everyone else, being able to live their lives and integrate very easily in and out of things, whereas you are, no matter what you do, and because of something that you can't control, you are constantly being put on the outside. And so I think, Aaron, obviously, he goes to the extreme of, I'm going to take all these people down and murder and brutalize them. And obviously, I do not relate with that at all, but I can relate with the feeling of, as a human being, always being looked at as, being other. Yeah, I can see how that would be very damaging and how that could affect your mental health. And obviously it affects Aaron in the complete, to the extreme. But yeah, I would say that would be a commonality. I can understand where he's coming from. Yeah. But yeah, obviously he goes way too far.
Indeed. Rochelle, any last reflections that you'd like to share with us?
I just really appreciate Kierstin's performance and her taking into account the complexity of the character, and of course being a woman also playing this male character as well. She should be commended for sure for that work that she had to do to do that as well on stage.
Yeah. Yes, which we really didn't delve into a whole lot because there's so much to delve into with just the complexities of Aaron, but then there's the further complexities of Kierstin playing this very male character. And one of the scenes that when we had to halt rehearsals that we were challenged by was the scene with Tamara in the forest, which potentially is a very sexual scene. And we were just starting to go down that road when everything halted. So hopefully we're going to get a chance. I would love to doing these sessions on Titus for these quick sessions has been so exciting to get back into the work that we were so engaged in. Well, I just want to thank you both, Kierstin Jones and Dr. Rochelle Brune-Bevel, for a fascinating discussion this morning. Thank you, Quick Center, for allowing us to go a little bit long so that we could have as rich a discussion and series of performances with Kierstin. We've got one more Marti Talks Theatre next week. We meet Chiron and Demetrius, the dastardly sons of Tamara, and Kierstin's character, Aaron, is the one who advises them for most of their dastardly deeds. So think about that as you prepare for next week's program. Thank you for being with us. See you next week.